Hi there, welcome to the Gardens and Graveyards channel. My name is Charisma and today we're meeting in the front garden and we're going to cut back our grasses, specifically the Pampas grass. So we have 3 big clumps of those. There's one back here that's looking pretty sad. We're gonna just cut it all the way to the ground and see, kind of assess and see what we could do to help it. This one's looking really beautiful, but we don't want it to just get full of dead foliage underneath there. And yeah, it's just better maintenance to just cut it down. Ideally, I would have done this about a month ago because there's already new foliage. And the downside to cutting it back late in the season is that everywhere that the blade cuts, or everywhere that a grass blade is cut, it will just look like a really bad haircut job. But I'm not terribly worried about it. You could see it just like drapes on the ground anyways. So there might be some that look a little raggedy this year, but mostly the brand new growth will cover that up through the summer and you won't really see it. I just don't want to get behind so far that we end up with like this big stock of dead foliage underneath there, and then that causes the middle to die out because no sun gets in there. Anyway, so we're just going to cut those back. There's one on the other side as well, and I'm just going to take a look around and see if there's any smaller grasses like a bluegrass or anything like that that needs to be cut back. And we will look and see if there's any weed eating that needs to be done once all the foliage has been removed from there. Pretty simple. We're just going to use, let me show you what we'll use. I'm going to be using this long-handled hedger. Okay. And this actually tilts so that I can hold it basically like a vacuum cleaner and cut these down in the bottom. And then I've got a weed eater if I need it. Probably going to clean up my ivy a little bit so that it's nice and tidy. And then I do have gloves because these are very sharp and they will give you horrible paper cuts if you're not careful. And that's it. Exciting. So I'm going to start with this one right here, and you can see what happens when you don't cut them back. The underneath just becomes all this dead and it just keeps piling on itself. This one specifically has a lot of ivy growing up through it. I've been a little bit afraid to dig it out or do too much with it because you could see, I don't know if you can tell, but it's like right on the edge of where the property slopes dramatically. And I'm worried that it's like holding a little bit of soil and doing some erosion control, but it really just needs to be addressed because it's an eyesore and it's not super healthy. So I'm just going to cut it all the way back, get all that ivy and blackberry out of there, and then kind of assess what can be done for it.
This one has needed that for a long time. I need to cut it short. Put it in.
Okay, so let me show you what happens to these really old grasses. Basically, I'm just pulling all this old stuff right out. You can see that there's nothing new growing here. Just pull all this old stuff out. And then we'll reassess. There's some roots right here that are not in the ground, so we can essentially cut those off and replant them. We'll see what things look like. So there's some new growth right here. So I'll want to try to save a little bit of that clump. But it's obvious which ones aren't alive because they just pull right out without any resistance. So I'm gonna clean this up and then we'll take a closer look at it again. All right, so I took all the dead stuff out of this and there's just this little bit of a pile, but you can see it's just a lot of rotten kind of stuff going on and then some dead leaves. So we're gonna move this out of the way, and then down here, even though it may have been helping with some of the erosion, I'm not sure that it was. I'd rather just clear this space, maybe plant a nice big hosta right here, opposed to trying to get this thing to grow on the edge. But there was this piece kind of hanging out over there, so I'm actually gonna, after I move this pile, I'm just gonna plant it up here by this clump and let it be on the top of this ridge rather than down low. right, that is gonna do it for today's project. I was able to cut down the 2 smaller ones and clean up the one that's needs a little help and replanted a big chunk of it to make it just look fuller. And then this one, when I started cutting into it, I thought that the new growth was maybe like 8 to 10 inches tall, but in fact it's like 3 feet tall. So I left some of the more graceful pieces on top, so as the new growth that's coming up that's 3 feet tall, it'll have jagged edges, but I'm hoping that with the more graceful pieces over the top of them, it won't be quite as noticeable. So lesson learned, I need to get on this in like the 1st of February, not the 1st of March. Other than that, we stopped the camera, but we did do a little bit of weed cleanup, and we cleaned up around our Nephofia or red hot pokers, and the area is looking nice and clean. I'm going to turn the camera around and just show you what it looks like now. So we'll start here with the Pampas that had the most dead in it. And what I did is actually this piece was down there and just kind of hanging in there, not really all the way in the ground. So I pulled that out. There was another chunk right here that had a lot of roots above ground. So I actually cut it off and buried it deeper right where it was living already, and tucked this kind of into the middle of this clump. And that's kind of what has to happen with these grasses as they get older. If I didn't have that, I could have, so this area is all empty, right? There's some roots here, but that's fine. I could have chopped this chunk out and dug it up and then buried it or planted it right here in the middle to just keep encouraging growth in the middle of this clump rather than just around the edges. Because what happens is the middle just dies out because the outer foliage grows so thick and blocks out the sun. And they just kind of clump out. That's what they do. Just kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the middle dies. So you just keep replanting the middle and you'll have a nice thick clump. I did a little bit of weed eating, like edging of this ivy. There's plenty more to do, but at least it got touched. This one, like I said, I just kind of shaved the sides. I pulled out a bunch of like dried curlicue stuff like this, just so there wasn't quite as much buildup next year. You could see what happens here is all these edges are all blunt, opposed to like a nice pretty edge like this. I don't know if you could see. So anyway, it's not gorgeous right now, but in a month's time, all of this will just cascade over the shaved area and you won't notice. And then around this direction, I didn't really show this before, but we just cleaned up all the old foliage from last year, all the Nephofia. So it's got nice clean foliage as the flowers start coming up, and then we weeded out some bitter cress. And then in the back here was our third clump, and this was a pretty typical, we didn't really have to do any maintenance, just shaved it down and cleaned it up. And this is a really new clump that's just getting established, so we didn't really have to do much there. And then I did, we pulled some weeds in this area. Back it up a little bit. We usually plant a big area of annuals right here for a bunch of color, but it's surrounded by a few different grasses. So we have some yucca there, we have a purple fountain grass there that will come back, and then we have ponytail grasses there, and then some bluegrass right there that we just trimmed back. And then I did a little bit of cleanup on this plant right here, just I mean, I didn't do a perfect job. There's still some dead pieces down there, but it looks a little better. Definitely cleaner and ready for spring. And the next thing that we'll probably do here before too long is add our Pentacetum back in here, which in previous years, it was right here where this burning bush is. I wasn't getting quite enough sun to get a lot of bulk, so I actually want to put it up in here somewhere. I just haven't quite decided where. That's hanging out in the greenhouse right now. It's still looking pretty good. It's a little bit dormant, a little bit brown, but it's still alive. The roots are still looking good, and it's putting on a little tiny bit of growth. So in the next, probably like 2-3 weeks, as soon as we consistently get temperatures above 40 at night, I will plant it out here. But right now we still keep dipping into the high 30s. So I just want to wait a little bit longer and make sure I don't lose it. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you're celebrating your life. I hope you're inspired to get out there and just do a little something in this beautiful spring that is soon to come. It's late winter still, but it feels like spring today. It feels really good out here. And I know a lot of people around the country are starting to experience that hint of spring in their gardens. So I hope that you're getting to do that, and I hope that you're celebrating your life, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.